Hey there, this is Attic Vision, and I'm Medusa. Today, after an onslaught of requests, I will be talking about a more common flick than I have been talking about, something a bit more attainable, something everyone has seen. This week, I'm going to be talking about The Howling. Now, everyone has seen The Howling. If you haven't seen The Howling, you need to see The Howling. But has everyone read the book? Have you read the book? The Howling. It was released in 1981 and directed by Joe Dante. Now, you might be familiar with Joe Dante's name. He's extremely famous. Having done a ridiculous amount of amazing flicks, Joe Dante is one of those directors. Piranha, 1978, Twilight Zone the movie, 1983, Gremlins, 1984, The Burbs, 1989, and there's so many more. The movie stars Dee Wallace. Now, Dee Wallace, if you're not familiar, she has been in hundreds of things. To mention a couple, Cujo, 1983, Critters, 1986, Popcorn, 1991. Dee Wallace is still acting, and she is so fabulous. Now, the screenplay for The Howling was written with the novel in mind. It was the inspiration for the screenplay. The novel was published in 1977. It was written by Gary Brandner. He also wrote 2 Howling sequels, as well as a little novel named Cameron's Closet, which was also made into a film that I happen to love. The Howlings both follow the same central plot. Karen and her husband go away after Karen is victim of a type of assault. Where they go just happens to be a somewhat remote location that turns out to be a den of werewolves. Throughout the two, there are some major differences. And there are some scenes that connect the two. In regards to the movie, there were names changed. I'm not sure why they were changed, but many of them were. For example, Karen's husband in the novel is not named Bill. His name is Roy. Characters were also added and taken away as needed. Marcia in the novel does not have a crazy beast-like brother.
Look at me.
I really love the novel. The novel is more simple. It's more confined, it's less extreme than the film is, and Karen actually spends most of her time alone. Unlike in the movie, where it seems like she's constantly surrounded by people and these crazy events happening. And the movie is very exciting and it's very getting to the next thing. With that said, the pacing is obviously quite different. While the movie takes place at this type of colony retreat that the doctor figure prescribes for Karen and her husband, the novel takes place in a small village town. The village is named Drago. After Karen's assault, which I mind you in the novel is much more extreme, Karen is attacked in her apartment condo and raped, and then has a miscarriage as a product of the rape. Her and her husband decide that it would be best for them to leave LA and go to a more secluded area so that Karen can heal on her own. After some renovations, they move into the cottage, which is right on the outskirts of the village, which is described as cloudy and quiet. There doesn't seem to be many people roaming the streets when they drive through the town. It gives this extremely eerie vibe to it. Less coastal and exciting as the retreat is in the movie. There is a weird sheriff character and a trustworthy doctor in the novel. They're just played out much differently than it is in the movie. There are scenes in the movie that you can tell were directly inspired by scenes in the novel. For example, the scene where Karen and company find the severed deer head in the movie.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
In the novel, Karen is, of course, alone and actually finds a dog's head. The transformation scenes are actually described much differently in the werewolves themselves in the novel versus the movie. In the movie, we get this towering creature werewolf. Whereas in the novel, it's more low-key. They're very similar to large wolves, and they're described having characteristics of their human counterparts. For example, a blonde werewolf, a blonde man. Marcia's character has these glowing green eyes, as does the version of her when she's a werewolf. The werewolf sex scene. Yes, it also happens in the novel, but it's divided into two separate encounters, one of which they are primarily in human form, and the other they are not. Man, is it strange in the novel. The final act of the novel is also wildly different.
Where's Bill?
I don't want to spoil anything about either for anyone, but I will say that the very end of the movie is much different than the very end of the novel. It just flat out doesn't happen. The end of the novel stops basically with the werewolves. At no point does it get carried back to LA. The Howling is a fantastic film. It's a must-see for horror fans and fans of just 80s movies in general. The novel is absolutely wonderful. I definitely recommend it. If you can find a copy, please read it. It is such a great book. I genuinely enjoyed it. Even if I didn't like the Howling film, I would appreciate this book as a standalone. I definitely recommend both to anyone. Leave me some comments. If you've read The Howling, I want to talk to someone about this book. I love it so much, and it's so wildly different than the movie is. I mean, wow. There are characters that I wish would have stuck in the movie. There are so many things that I wish could have been done with the source material. I absolutely love The Howling as a film itself, but part of me wishes that I could have gotten another movie that would have been closer to the source material as well. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Also, if you've noticed my Freddy's Dead t-shirt, it's from Gutter Garbs. I'll include a link for their Instagram and web store in the show notes below. And follow me on Instagram. It's also linked in the show notes below. You've just watched Attic Vision. I'm Medusa.